UFC Fight Night Garcia versus Onama is here, and today I'm going to be going through the entire card, unfortunately, because I've been kind of dreading making this video, because this card is hot, stinky dog shit, and I don't want to have to go through every fight on this card, but we will do it nevertheless. We'll go ahead and jump straight into the early prelim opener of Talita Alankar versus Ariane Carnelossi. I'm going to go with Ariane Carnelossi in this one. Yeah, Alankar, she's got good jiu-jitsu. She's a solid grappler. But Carnelossi, she has a ton of knockouts on her resume. She's got 9 wins by knockout. And she's a bit of a brute, as you can see in her fighter profile here. She's a strong woman. She's a strong woman. She's got a lot more testosterone flowing through her than Alankar does. Alankar is also a little bit green in the sport. She only has 8 pro fights versus Carnelossi's 18. And yeah, I think Carnelossi is going to get this one done. I do worry a little bit about her grappling and her getting kind of outdone in the grappling, but I think she's strong. She's a little bit shorter, or she's actually taller. She's got a height advantage, a 1-inch height advantage over Alankar, but she's a little bit more of a brute. I think Alankar is going to have a hard time holding her down, and yeah, Carnelossi's only losses since 2014 are Angela Hill and Lupe Godinez, which there's no shame in those losses. So I think I'll get Carnelossi getting this one done by decision. I don't think she'll get the knockout in this one, but I think she'll pick up a decision win. And we'll move on to the next fight on the card, which is Phil Rowe versus Seokhyun Ko. This fight should be a lot higher up the card because this is a really fun fight. This is awesome. Seokhyun Ko, he had a really good fight against Aben Elliott. He looked dominant in that fight, which was very impressive. He was a pretty sizable underdog going into that one, and it wasn't short notice because he had plenty of notice for the fight. Not that fight specifically. He was in camp for another fight, but both guys had some falling out with their previous fights, and it got shuffled around. Anyways, Seokhyun Ko ended up matched up against Aben Elliott, and he was a big underdog going into that one. And he ended up getting it done by a dominant 30-27 decision. Completely dominated the grappling. It was one-way traffic. Landed some good shots at the feet as well. He completely took the sails out of Aben Elliott, and it was not a competitive fight at all. His pressure is crazy. He's got a smothering pace, and he will get you backed up against the fence and shoot and get you down and work you on the ground nonstop. He's got great scrambles as well. And yeah, my concern with this, though, is that Phil Rowe does have nearly a 10-inch reach advantage. It's 9.5, but yeah, very sizable reach advantage for Phil Rowe here. And he's coming off a big win over Angelusa. Now, in that fight, he did get hurt very bad in round 2. He got dropped and nearly finished in that fight. And he fought through a lot of adversity to get back in that fight and go on to win it. However, when he got that win, it came at a point where he was on the front foot, where he was putting the pressure on Angelusa. And Seokhyun Ko is not going to allow him to do that. He's going to be on the front foot the whole fight. He's going to smother him. Now, Phil Rowe, he's tall. He's a lot taller. Obviously, he's got the crazy reach advantage, so he's a lot lankier of a guy than Seokhyun Ko. So I do worry that he'll be able to get up, but I think Ko, he's got a good gas tank. I think he'll be able to keep that pressure on him and keep getting him down. I know, as many people know, Phil Rowe has a lot of BJJ experience. You'll see him if you look through his Tapology page. He's got tons of grappling matches, some against Gordon Ryan, against Craig Jones, a whole bunch of guys. So he's big into the BJJ scene, but he doesn't have that great of takedown defense. So I don't think that's going to work too well when it comes to an MMA fight here. I think Seokhyun Ko is going to keep getting him down. I think he's going to dominate him on the ground. There might be some hairy moments on the feet because of the big reach advantage for Rowe, but I got Seokhyun Ko getting this one done by decision. I'll go 29-28, maybe a little bit closer than the Aben Elliott fight. Moving on, Alice Ardelin versus Montserrat Ruiz. I'm gonna go with Ardelin because she is a big favorite in this fight. She's like a -400 favorite, and look at those two records; they stink. Ruiz is also a bit of a midget. She's 5 feet tall. Ardelin's taller than her. Let's see the reach difference. She's only got an inch of reach on her, but she will be a little bit harder for Ruiz to hit on because she's a little bit taller than her. Yeah, this fight kind of stinks. I'll go with the favorite here. And Alice Ardelin. Moving on. Oops, I clicked on Norma Jamont. There we go. Ketlin Vieira versus Norma Jamont. This is actually a little bit of a higher stakes women's fight. Sorry, let me get the names at the top right there. This is a little bit of a higher stakes women's fight compared to the last one. Ketlin Vieira, she gave Kayla Harrison her most competitive fight in the UFC so far. It went to a 29-28 decision. I want to say that Was it on UFC 300? No, Kayla Harrison beat Holly Holm on UFC 300. It was, I think, on the Salt Lake City card that Ketlen Vieira had a pretty competitive fight with Kayla Harrison. She took a round off her in a 3-round fight, which was the most resistance that anybody in the UFC has given her to date. But since then, she hasn't looked all that great in her career. She's won her last fight, but hasn't been all that great since then. Norma Jamont, she is very sharp on the feet. She's quick. She's sharp. She was the one who opened up that really nasty cut on Irene Aldana that Dana White got a close-up photo and posted on his Instagram. It was disgusting looking. Norma Jamont was the girl who did that, who opened up that really nasty cut and dominated that fight. And Ketlen Vieira, I believe she's lost by KO to Irene Aldana in the past. So I don't want to use MMA math with this. This is still going to be a competitive fight, but yeah, Norma Jamont has dominantly beat the girl that Ketlen Vieira lost to by KO. So that's something of note. And Norma Jamont, I think the momentum's on her side this one. She's on a 5-fight win streak. She's looking really good as of late. And yeah, I have her getting this one done by 29-28 decision, getting the win over Ketlen Vieira. And can I close this, please? Thank you. Moving on, Dante Johnson versus Cedric Dumas. About probably a month ago, I think it was, Dante Johnson had his fight on the Contender Series where he fought at heavyweight. And he was, I want to say he was 208 for that fight. And the guy he was fighting was like 220 pounds. It was a weird matchup because neither guy really belonged to heavyweight. Dante Johnson, I mean, as you can see by who he scheduled to fight, he's a middleweight. And the guy he was fighting against looked like he could probably cut down to 205 and fight light heavyweight. So it was a bit of a weird one. But he was fighting a much larger guy, a much taller guy as well. Dante Johnson was out there looking like Deron Winn. So he was definitely had a much shorter frame. But he was able to get the knockout win in round 1 against that guy. He knocked him out bad against the cage, followed up with big ground and pound shots and put him away. I think we might see a similar result here. Cedric Dumas is not very good. And he's been chinned a decent amount of times recently. I know that loss. Who's the really lanky guy with like 40 pro fights or something? It's gonna frustrate me that I can't think of his name, but he's the guy who lost to Joaquin Buckley in St. Louis. That guy. I know he got a KO win over Cedric Dumas, which is kind of weird because there was like an eye poke in there. It's a bit of a weird finish. But yeah, Dumas is not very high level. He's probably one of the worst middleweights on the roster. Amongst a handful of them, there's a lot of really scrubby middleweights just kind of hanging around for some reason that haven't been cut. But they cut guys like Danny Barlow. Doesn't make sense. That's beside the point. Cedric Dumas sucks. Dante Johnson has a bit of potential. He's got a lot of knockout power. I was going through his regional career, and he was kind of just beating up on heavyweight guys. So that does worry me a little bit that he was fighting just out-of-shape guys to get into the UFC. But Cedric Dumas is not very high level, and I think you'll be able to put the pressure on him, get him backed up against the cage, probably land a big overhand and put him down. If not, he's got such a dense, compact frame where I think he can blast takedowns and get Cedric Dumas down. And once he gets him there, I think he can land some ground and pound shots and find a KO that way. So either way, I think it'll come on the feet or by ground and pound. I think you'll get a round 1 knockout over Cedric Dumas. And we'll move on to the next fight. Timmy Kwamba versus Cheng Ho Lee. This fight is a real 50-50 for me. I've been having a tough time with this one. Timmy Kwamba looked really good in his last fight against Roberto Romero. Landed that flying knee KO. It was really nice. He looked sharp and fast on the feet. But Cheng Ho Lee, he's got really good grappling. He's got crazy pressure, similar to how I was talking about with Xiaokyung Ko earlier on the card. Cheng Ho Lee's got really nasty pressure. We saw it in his fight against Cortavius Romeus. Got him down just relentlessly, just beat him up on the ground. Got a nasty ground and pound TKO. I think he was throwing some big elbows. Got him all bloodied up. It was a nasty finish. Cheng Ho Lee is really good. And Timmy Kwamba, during that finishing sequence that he had over Roberto Romero, he was kind of dancing around, fighting on the back foot. And I think if you're backed up against the cage trying to play that game against a pressure grappler like Cheng Ho Lee, I think he's going to get this one done. I think he's going to implement that pressure. I think he's going to get him down. Timmy Kwamba's not bad. He's a solid fighter, but yeah, he's also 1-2 in the UFC. I think that he's not as bad as the record indicates, I would say. But Cheng Ho Lee, he's only had one loss in his career. It was earlier in his career on the regional scene. He got his win in his debut dominantly. So he's got a little bit more momentum. He's got a little bit more promise when it comes to his UFC career. We've kind of seen the level that Timmy Kwamba's at. So I'll have Chang Ho Lee getting this one done. I'll say 29-28 decision. I think he might get outstruck on the feet for a round, but I think for the most part, if Timmy Kwamba's trying to fight on the back foot and land those strikes, I think he's going to get backed up a lot. I think he's going to get taken down a lot and held there by Chang Ho Lee. And when Chang Ho Lee gets you down, he lands really, really nasty ground and pound shots. It's not like Jailton Almeida. He makes his top control count. So I'm going to go Chang Ho Lee, 29-28 decision in that one. Moving on up the card, the prelim headliner of this absolutely stacked Apex Fight Night card, Billy Elikana versus Kevin Christian. Now, I think Elikana is actually solid. I think he's a decent fighter. But he doesn't seem to have that dog in him. He doesn't seem to have that ferocity where he's out there to really try and hurt someone. I know I don't want to hate on him too much for his short notice debut fight against Bogdan Guskov and the way it ended. He kind of curled up and took a beating in round 2 of that fight and lost by TKO. However, I think that was actually a decent performance because he was having a lot of success in the grappling early on in that fight in round 1. So I think even though he lost, it was a short notice debut for him. He was 7-1 at the time, I want to say. Yeah, he was 7-1, so he was really green in the sport against really experienced Bogdan Guskov, who's, as we know now, he's at least a top 10 light heavyweight. He's a really good fighter. And he made it competitive in round 1. He got the grappling off, did really well in that department. And then in his second fight against Ibo Aslan, he pretty dominantly won that fight. But I say dominantly not in the sense that he beat up on Ibo Aslan. I just say it was a clear 30-27 win for him. That fight I did not like because it was like a sparring match. The two of them were smiling at each other, high-fiving, laughing, and they were just landing tappy strikes the whole time. Elikana was just staying ahead by a little bit, and he won a decision. He won very clearly, but it was not a very inspiring performance. He did not look very good in that fight. Fortunately for him, though, he's going up against Kevin Christian, who hasn't fought in over a year. I'm not sure why that was. He won on Dana White's Contender Series in 2024, and we haven't seen him in the UFC since. Billy Elikana has had 2 or 3 fights since this guy's last fought. So the activity is in favor of Elikana. I don't know why this guy was out for so long. He's very tall. Let's see his reach. He's got 3 inches of reach on Elikana. He's very tall, but I don't think Elikana, he's not going to be headhunting and looking for a KO where, Christian can utilize that height and reach advantage. I think Elikana is going to be just tapping away at him, landing low kicks, landing some decent body kicks, landing his jab, his 1-2, just doing the fundamentals and kind of coasting to a 30-27 win on the feet here. Kevin Christian's not all that good, and I think Billy Elikana is decent. I don't think he's got that switch in him where he can really dominate a fight and really hurt someone. So I don't think he's going to make it to the top level, but I think Elikana's solid, and I think he'll get this one done here. So we'll move on to the main card. Opening with the main card, we have Alan Nascimento versus Cody Durden. And Cody Durden in his last fight, he lost by KO to Jose Ochoa, but I don't think there's a lot of shame in that. I think Jose Ochoa is really good. He had a very close fight with Hasu Almabayev, which is impressive, and that was on short notice too for Jose Ochoa. I think Ochoa is really good. And Cody Durden actually had him in a moment of trouble in round 1 of that fight. He hurt him pretty bad on the feet, but Ochoa rallied, got the round 2 knockout pretty early into the round. But I think if you're not a guy who has high finishing potential, who can either sub or KO Cody Durden, I think you're going to have trouble with him because he's a dog. He's the opposite of Billy Elikana. He is a true scrapper. This guy will bring a fight every time. And yeah, he had that fight with Jake Hadley where he was in a little bit of trouble on the ground, but he escaped his submission position, dogged it out, and beat up on Jake Hadley to win that fight. He's had other fights like that. He's a tough guy. Alan Nascimento, he's a good grappler, but Cody Durden, he's got that wrestling base where I think he'll be able to deal with that. I think he'll be able to stuff the takedowns. I think he'll be able to survive any awkward positions on the ground. And I think he may be able to even get some control time of his own. And on the feet, I think Durden's gonna just kind of outthrow him. I think he's gonna outvolume him. So I'm gonna go Cody Durden. I think he'll drop the first round. I think he'll rally and come back and win this fight. I'm going to give him a 29-28 decision win here over Alan Nascimento. He's a pretty big underdog, and this is a short notice catchweight fight for him, which does concern me a little bit, but him not having to cut down all the way to 125 kind of alleviates some of that concern I have about him taking it on short notice. I'm going to go with Cody Durden, get this one done by a decision win where he wins the last 2 rounds after losing the first one. And we will move on. Charles Radke versus Daniel Frunze. Now, Daniel Frunze, in his last fight, he got beat up bad by Reese McKee for a round before it was stopped from a doctor's stoppage. And I was thinking, all right, maybe Reese McKee's kind of turned the corner of his career. Maybe he's all right. But then Reese McKee's next fight happened against Axel Sola, and he looked like abysmal, stinky dog shit in that fight as well. So it's the same old Reese McKee. Not much has changed. And Daniel Frenza got his ass beat by Reese McKee. So I think this makes it pretty clear on who to pick here. I'm going to go Charles Radke. He's dangerous. And Daniel Frenza, he has, I think it's 8 KO wins, I want to say. 7 or 8 KO wins. So most of his wins come by KO. So that means he likes to look for a fight. He likes to look for a scrap. They're going to trade. And if Daniel Frenza's getting his ass beat by Reese McKee, I tend to think that Charles Radke's gonna find that shot in the pocket and put him down. I got Charles Radke winning this one by an early round 1 finish. Yeah, I think he's too powerful. I think Daniel Frenza's not very high level. I don't think losing to Reese McKee is a good look. It's really just that simple. And I think Radke, his only 2 losses have come to really good welterweights, Mike Mallet and Carlos Prates. So there's not a lot of shame in those losses. Yeah, I have Radke getting this one done. Early finish for him. Not a lot of finishes I'm predicting on this card, so hoping I'm wrong with the method of victory for most of these fights. But I do think Radke's going to deliver. I think he's going to get that knockout. We'll move on. Isaac Dulgarian versus Yadier Del Val. This is a tough one because Del Val, he's undefeated. He looked solid in his debut, albeit it was against a bum. He did get a submission win in his debut. But Isaac Dulgarian, he looked really good against Christian Rodriguez. He arguably won that fight. He out-grappled a really good fighter in Christian Rodriguez, who's known for turning away up-and-coming prospects. That being his only pro loss is a good look. A very close fight. A lot of people think he won that fight. He out-grappled Christian Rodriguez for a majority of that fight. Yadier Duvall, he's he's well-rounded. He's a little bit bigger than Dulgarian. He had a decent performance on Dana White Contender Series, but it wasn't anything special. I think he won a decision, so not the most impressive thing right there. And I think it'll be a competitive fight, but I think Dulgarian's going to have the clear advantage in the grappling, and I think he's going to go to that a lot in this fight. So I'll have him winning this fight 29-28, where he picks up a decision win just by out-wrestling by out-wrestling Duvall. Moving on up the card, Jeremiah Wells versus Themba Gorimbo. So there was a time where Jeremiah Wells was kind of viewed as a dangerous up-and-coming prospect. I remember seeing him on social media posts where he was put up amongst I remember seeing a post distinctly. It was like undefeated welterweight prospects, and had Mike Malott at the time. It had Shavkat Rakhmonov. It had a bunch of different guys. It had Ian Gary on there. One of them was Jeremiah Wells. So there was a time where people had legitimate hype for Jeremiah Wells. But since then, it has not been going too well for him. He got subbed in round 3 against Carlson Harris. He got subbed out cold. I was actually at that fight live in Nashville. And then after that, he lost a decision to Max Griffin. And he's only fought twice since April of 2023. This is his 3rd fight in 3.5 years, which is not good, especially for someone who's 39 years old. That tells me it's just you're at that stage of your career where you've kind of accepted that you're not going to be a top-level fighter, given the age and given the form he's in. So that doesn't bode well for I think his chances here in this one. Themba Gorimbo, he is a well-rounded fighter. He's got solid wrestling. He's also got that knockout with the overhand right over Pete Rodriguez. So I think he'll be able to show Jeremiah Wells something on the feet where he'll be able to earn his respect, and Wells won't be able to just walk him down and blitz through him. I think Wells is going to have to be a little patient. And I think Gorimbo's going to land some decent shots. He's also got that decent wrestling that he can rely on. Overall, I think the momentum's on his side when it comes to age and career form. I know he's coming off that loss to Vicente Luque, but Jeremiah Wells is just, I think he's on the way out. I think this is one of his last fights in MMA in general. I don't think he's got long left in the sport. He's 39, not active at all. He could go out there and get a knockout win because he's got power, but we saw him struggle with Carlson Harris. It was a competitive fight. I won't say struggle. That's a bit unfair. It was a competitive fight before getting subbed in round 3 by Carlson Harris. And for a guy that has kind of the title of being a powerful guy, he wasn't able to take care of Carlson Harris like you've seen guys like Chaos Williams do, where he knocks him out in round 1. So I don't think Jeremiah Wells' power is really something to write home about. I don't think it'll give Gorimbo too many problems. I think Gorimbo will be able to control him in the clinch. He's a lot taller than Jeremiah Wells, so I think you'll be able to weigh on him in the clinch, get some control time there. I think he might be able to implement the wrestling, and I think it'll be pretty even on the feet. And with how Jeremiah Wells, with the state he's in his career right now, I'm actually going to go with Themba Gorimbo. I don't know if he has even any submission wins in his career. I don't, but I'm going to go him getting a round 3 submission. I think Jeremiah Wells might make a mistake in a wrestling exchange. Garimbo's able to lock up a submission, get this one done. Also, something I like with this too is Themba Garimbo he has trained at very good gyms, and he currently trains at Extreme Couture. So he's training with high-level guys. I think he's at a point in his career where, I mean, I personally don't think he's anywhere near top level, and I don't think he will get to that level. But he's a younger guy. He had a short notice fight with Luque where I think he said he went into that with the flu. So he's got kind of a built-in excuse there. There's some cope where you can say, look, I wasn't 100% going to that fight. Let me bounce back here. Jeremiah Wells, though, I think he's on the way out. So give me Themba Garimbo getting this one done. I'll go late finish in this fight. Moving on up the card, the co-main event, Waldo Cortez Acosta versus Ante Delija. Now, I know this card overall stinks, but for an Apex co-main in 2025, this actually is a solid fight. Waldo Cortez Acosta, he's coming off that loss to Sergey Pavlovich, where he didn't do much of anything. He just kind of got outstruck and just kind of hung in there, didn't get chinned. I do trust his chin because of that fight. I thought he would have got knocked out against Sergey Pavlovich, but I also think you can attribute some of that to Sergey Pavlovich not being the same fighter that he was at one point in his career. Pavlovich was the boogeyman for a while until he ran into Tom Aspinall and got dusted up early. Since then, he's fought very passive, and he hasn't really let go like he used to in his career. So I do find it a bit impressive that Cortez Acosta was able to last to a decision against Sergey Pavlovich, but I'm also not sure if it's something we could put too much stock into because it's not the same Pavlovich that we saw on the come up. Now, Ante Delija, he looked very impressive in his debut against Marcin Tybura. He looked very sharp on the feet. His hands were crazy fast. I mean, you'll see heavyweights, and this is his debut, by the way, against Tybura. This isn't like he had a bunch of fights where he looked iffy on the come up. This was his debut against Marcin Tybura, who's known to turn away prospects from time to time, and he took care of him quickly in one round, knocked him out cold, and his hands looked really fast. He looked sharp. He also trains at a really good gym. He's at that Tom Aspinall heavyweight super gym in England. So he's got really good training partners, and it makes sense while his hand speed is so crazy. He trains with elite strikers at the heavyweight division. And yeah, I think I'm gonna go with Ante Delija to get this one done. Cortez Acosta likes to play that game where he fights on the back foot and he taunts a little bit, tries to lure guys in and overswing. But I think it's a little bit risky to play that game against Ante Delija, who we just saw get a devastating KO against someone who was against the fence, backed up in Marcin Tybura, and he's got very, very fast hands. Yeah, he's fast, he's powerful. I think Cortez Acosta invites that a little bit too much. And I think Delija, he hasn't run into that loss that really destroys his confidence like Pavlovich did. So I think he's going to really swing for the fences here. I think he's going to find the chin of Cortez Acosta, and I think he's going to do it in round 1. I'll go with Ante Delija getting a round 1 KO over Waldo Cortez Acosta, the Salsa boy. Moving on to our main event, Steve Garcia versus David Onama. Featherweight bout here. I'm going to go with Steve Garcia. And I'm quite confident in this one. I'm going to have him getting it done. I'll go round 2 KO. David Onama is a bit durable. His chin isn't all that good, but his recovery is very good. He's been dropped a lot in his career, and he's bounced back up. He doesn't tend to get put out cold. Now, Steve Garcia could be the guy to do it. Steve Garcia is very powerful, but I think David Onama will be in trouble early. I think he'll recover, get into round 2, and I think Garcia will find the finish there. David Onama had a really, really hard time with Roberto Romero. Got dropped bad in that fight. And Roberto Romero, as I talked about earlier, he was the guy who got flatline KO'd by a flying knee by Timmy Kwamba, and he's no longer in the UFC anymore. So that's a really bad look for David Onama. Plus his last fight against Giga Chikadze. I thought he lost that fight. I thought he got out damaged in 2 of the rounds. I think he got a little bit of control time in round 3, like a minute of control time, but I don't think it was enough to give him that decision. I think he lost that fight. I did have money on Giga Chikadze, I will admit, so maybe there's a little bias in there, but a lot of people have that same mindset that Giga Chikadze won that fight. So that's also not a good look. We've also seen him get broken by Nate Landwehr, which, no disrespect to Nate the Train. That's not a shot at him. We love Nate the Train around here. But David Onama, he's had some moments where he's been shown adversity in his career by guys that aren't as good as Steve Garcia. And I think Steve Garcia, if he gets you hurt, he's going to put you away. He is ultra dangerous, and he's also super unorthodox. He fights in a pretty weird style. He's got a really, really long arms, as you can see here. I mean, they go down to like nearly the end of his shorts. He's got freakishly long arms. But yeah, Steve Garcia, I think he's going to present some problems for David Onama on the feet. David Onama looks all right when it's a clean striking fight and he can kind of be in control. But when he's fighting someone dangerous and a bit unorthodox like Roberto Romero, there's times where he can get caught. And I think Steve Garcia is going to find those shots, and I think he's going to put them down. And yeah, I'm going to go Steve Garcia winning the main event here. Garcia's also got really good wins. He's on a big win streak right now. He beat Chase Hooper, beat Malik Wazal Costa. He beat Kyle Nelson. That win has aged well. And I know it's an old Calvin Kattar, but he dominantly beat Calvin Kattar. There's no doubt about that. You know, you have two guys that are at kind of, they're veterans who've been around for the while. They're on kind of the downhill slope in Calvin Kattar and Giga Chikadze. And both these guys dealt with them differently. Steve Garcia won a clear 30-27 decision where he dropped Kattar in round 3. David Onama arguably lost to his veteran test to get in the rankings, per se. So I think Steve Garcia is a better fighter. He also has a win over Shet Mariscal on the regional scene. He got a KO win over him. It's a weird stoppage, but still a KO win nevertheless. He was winning that fight. And yeah, I think Steve Garcia is higher level fighter than David Onama, and I think he's too dangerous for him. I think he's going to put him out in the first 2 rounds. So yeah, that's all I got for you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you in the next one.